Howka everyone, my name is Dr. David Breckner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Imperial Valley Desert Museum. Today, my museum staff and I will be exploring the Kumeyaay's history from creation to the present day, and demonstrating their strength, courage, and resilience. The Kumeyaay are the indigenous people that have lived and currently live in the San Diego County, Imperial County, and Baja California, Mexico for over 10,000 years. The traditional lands the Kumeyaay inhabit are the most geographically diverse landscapes of any culture group in the Americas. Their geographical territories include the coast of the Pacific Ocean, mountains, valleys, desert, and the shores of ancient Lake Kauai, present day the Salton Sea.
Howka everyone, my name is Angelina, and I'm the Education Coordinator at IVDM. It is my job to create lessons and content on the vast history of the Imperial Valley and Eastern San Diego regions, as well as how to appreciate the history and culture of the first peoples of the region, the Kumeyaay. The Kumeyaay encompass many bands with cultural differences over an extensive and geographically diverse territory and with an even longer history. Current archaeological evidence demonstrates early man in the Americas at least as far back as 13,500 BCE. Theories for how these peoples first appeared often reference the Bering Strait land bridge migration theory, suggesting that early peoples crossed into North America from East Asia via a connecting piece of land by Alaska. Many Kumeyaay have a different account of their origins. Based on Kumeyaay creation stories and oral traditions that have been passed down from generation to generation, we learned that the Kumeyaay have always been in this area. Today, ongoing discoveries in Imperial Valley and nearby San Diego County have the potential to push back this date from 15,000 years. Instead, we now have a date that is much older and in more aligned with the Kumeyaay's own account. The more modern history of the Kumeyaay and that of the other indigenous groups in the region has often been told through the story of other peoples and their periods of governance, the Spanish, Mexicans, and Americans. The history of the Kumeyaay remains, however, their own story, one of a people both diverse and yet united.
Howka everyone, my name is Kristen and I'm the head curator at the Imperial Valley Desert Museum. Prior to European contact, the Kumeyaay comprised of multiple bands and family groups over an extensive territory. While these self-governing bands had clearly defined territories, they would often unite in common defense of the region.
They lived in small villages formed of family groups which had to move frequently to find new sources of food and water. The Kumeyaay lived in the coastal regions, in the desert, the valleys, and in the mountains. The coastal regions provided the ocean and rivers they fished in, and they would hunt and gather food in the mountains and desert.
This all changed when contact by European explorers and eventual settlement affected traditional Kumeyaay society and territories. In 1542, Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo became the first European to arrive on Kumeyaay coastal lands, which is present-day Point Loma here in San Diego. With this arrival, the Kumeyaay entered into a new period which witnessed the redefinition of their lands and spaces. Father Junipero Serra established the first Franciscan mission near the ancient Kumeyaay village of Cosoy, known today as Old Town San Diego.
Mission San Diego de Alaca, known today as Mission Basilica San Diego de Alaca, was founded in 1769 on land that has long been inhabited by the Kumeyaay people. The Spanish missions were the beginning of a long-term occupation by settlers across Kumeyaay lands and a shift in the identity and culture of the Kumeyaay people. Father Junipero Serra established rules concerning new lifestyles, religious beliefs, and technologies to be adopted. The smaller villages which supported the family clans and more mobile lifestyle of the Kumeyaay were replaced by settled and permanent farms, often worked by Kumeyaay labor. In the following years and decades, the landscape of occupation and activity in the region continued to evolve and change. The Kumeyaay were ever present, serving at times as active participants, agents of resistance, and witnesses to an increasingly complex and developed Baja and Alta California.
Jumping forward a few years, the conclusion of the Mexican-American War settled the future of oversight and ownership of California. Members of the Kumeyaay people lent their support to the effort, determined to assert their place in this region and this land. The signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 established the current U.S.-Mexico border. It divided California from Mexico, but excluded the Kumeyaay people from consideration. On September 9, 1850, when California was officially admitted as a state, the resulting international border between California and the Baja California region of Mexico effectively divided Kumeyaay ancestral homelands. Unfortunately, many of the Kumeyaay didn't know this change had occurred. When they traveled into their traditional lands in Baja California, Mexico, they found themselves unable to return to their lands on the other side of the border.
Nearly from the beginning, with the creation of the first missions, and later rancheros, traditional lands and territory rights of the region's first peoples have struggled to be recognized. California established its first reservation for its indigenous groups in 1875, setting aside dedicated land for their use. This award included lands the Kumeyaay had been actively trying to protect, but represented only a minute fraction of their total original territory and failed to fully consider the importance of specific sites and resources. Today, a reservation is an allotment of land held in trust by the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs for indigenous tribes and bands, which constitutes sovereign territory. Today in San Diego, there are 18 reservations, 13 of which are Kumeyaay. The Kumeyaay reservations in the United States are Borona, Campo, Capitan Grande, Huiapai, Inaja, Jamul, La Posta, Manzanita, Mesa Grande, San Pascual, Santa Isabel, Siquan, and Viejas. Laguna is a non-federally recognized community in San Diego County. Kumeyaay communities in Baja California include La Huerta, Juntas de Neji, San Antonio de Necua, and San Jose de la Zora. Each reservation has its own government and its own constitution and flag. In other words, not all of the Kumeyaay are represented by a single government.
Here at the IVDM, we are responsible for the preservation of 133 acres of traditional Kumeyaay land. These lands are under stewardship and conservation easements with other tribes. A conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement that permanently limits uses of the land in order to protect its conservation values. Conservation easements give us the ability to recognize who these traditional lands belong to, as well as preservation, care, and unlimited access. We provide access for them to hold gatherings and monitor training to recognize traditional sites. The Kumeyaay are composed of 13 bands, and we work with some of these bands to ensure the preservation of these lands. Plants and animals remained untouched. Through stewardship, we are responsible for caring and protecting the land for whose people it belongs to. These traditional Kumeyaay lands are now owned by the tribes themselves or privately owned. IVDM sees themselves as stewards of these lands by guaranteeing protection of these lands for future generations.
Despite exterminations, loss of land, identity, and culture, the Kumeyaay people have demonstrated extraordinary resilience. There are numerous efforts underway by the Kumeyaay people to come together to recognize that history and heritage as the First Peoples, and to educate band members and non-members on cultural traditions and languages. Ceremonies and social gatherings serve to reinforce tradition and reclaim cultural identity. The Kumeyaay today hope for a brighter tomorrow as one people with many voices.